Good morning, Bill.
Good morning, Bill. How are you, sir?
I'm pretty good. I actually get to see my Bill in person today, so I'm pretty pumped.
We have an in-person hangout today. Yes,
Yep, it should be good.
absolutely. Yeah. Like, how long has it been since I've seen you in
I was
person?
trying to remember in person. I mean, because I'm trying. I don't remember the last thing we did, so I can't peg it to a date. Can't because I can't remember. I haven't been to your
You,
new house. I know that.
yeah,
Um,
yeah. I think you came over because we were doing like 12-week planning for the show
yeah.
or something like that. Good morning, Mike.
Hey, Mike.
But yeah, like, and
Oh
it was
wow.
so funny because you were like, "Can we hang out in person?" And I
Yeah.
and I said, "Do you want to hang out in person?"
Yeah, well, I'm the one that's typically more out and about in person with
Yes.
people, just because I have clients, or I did in person, and
Hmm.
that sort of stuff. So I've got some regular stuff, and so I didn't know if you were taking in person guests.
No, yeah, and then it was just funny because I'm just so used to talking to you so regularly over this thing. Like I kind of had this moment of like, do you want to hang out? Like,
Yeah, yeah, I would love to. So anyway. So yeah, we get to hang out today, and we get to catch up and um, talk show and do all sorts of stuff. We'll just see what we get into, right?
yes, I am such a, I guess like worry wart, right? This is a label I have. You were like, hey, can we get together? And I mean, instantly was like,
In person.
uh-oh.
Uh-oh.
Yeah,
News.
yeah. Like a meeting with no agenda and it's in person. This has never gone well
We're
in my
breaking
entire
up.
life.
This is not good. We need to talk.
Let's have a quick conversation about your performance. Um, just get promoted to customer. Uh, man, no, I'm excited to hang out and chat in
Yep,
person.
for sure, for sure.
I,
Well, I was gonna say on Monday we chatted a little bit uh, about not having like goals and stuff. I don't want to jump like right into it today, but I was just thinking about how how often goals can change. Because I'm also reading
oh man,
Atomic Habits
yeah.
again, and so it's like, hey, don't goals
Again?
goals are for losers, like don't do goals. Well, it's actually only my third time, and the book's been out 5 years. Can you believe that?
So I've never read the book, honestly. I know, I know, I know. This is a little much for you to take, I guess. Um,
Oh, wow.
when for whatever reason, nothing against the guy, I never really got on the James Clear train,
Oh,
right? Like I don't know what it was. And so when the book came out, I was like, aren't these just his tweets? Kind of thing. Um,
mm,
so haven't read the book. Like I know a couple of little nuggets from it that the people talk about, like micro habits and stuff like that.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I've largely missed the bus on James Clear.
Yeah, I gotta say, he's on the pantheon for me. Like he's really in that kind of, if I could only read five business authors again ever, like he'd be on it because he's just so effective. Like nothing is wasted. Everything he writes has a purpose. It's like, oh, it just it's so good. That's so good. I'm actually really surprised because he is very kind of stoic in the way he writes and the way he thinks and his process. Like his,
Hmm.
I still get his newsletter, his 321 or 123, whatever he calls it. And like
That's what I was thinking it was. What was that
yeah.
his book was just the newsletter in a
Uh
book form. And I was like, well, if you're reading the newsletter, you're probably fine.
yeah, yeah. Which wouldn't you hate that if somebody said that about your book? Like you
Oh,
started putting stuff out
well,
from your book and
yeah.
oh, I've read
fair,
the newsletter for
fair
like a year
turnabout,
now.
sir. Touche, right? Well said. Um, but yeah,
But you're right.
that's fair,
There's a
right?
lot
I
of
don't,
overlap.
I don't think any author would like that to be. Isn't this just a bunch of whatever, like all put together? Isn't
Right.
this just a bunch of words?
Right,
Uh,
right. Wait, I know all the steps. Doesn't that mean I'm a full-blown salesperson? Like, come on. Like, I know all the steps.
that's
I've
fair.
never done them all together and seen them how they work together, but
Oh man.
yeah.
Um,
But yes, you're right. He actually does put a lot of his book in his newsletter, which just repurposing it is genius, I think, because there's a lot of people who haven't read his book.
yeah.
So
I don't know why I'm stuck on him. I
Yeah, that's
well,
fine.
I know lots of people who like really like his stuff. I don't know for some
I do.
reason it's
Well,
not in my
point being,
vein.
yeah, point being, I'm rereading it, and so I'm rethinking goals. He says that goals are a great like waypoint. Like, let's talk about the goal. Great. Now,
Hmm.
forget about your goal. Let's build up your systems, right? And so we talk about this stuff all the time because
Yes.
you fail to the level of your systems. Like your
Yeah.
floor are your systems, not your goals.
Hmm.
So yeah, so I was
Oh,
just
that's
kind of
an
like,
interesting. The your floor is your systems, right? Because um, I gave my talk at the college yesterday, right? And so it was
yeah,
very cool.
yeah,
Dan came along with me, who's like a real life example of the power of networking because we met in a digital community and we've done a bunch of stuff together. I've been on his show a couple of times that led to other stuff. And so I was like, hey, will you come with me to this thing? Because I just think it'd be cool if you were there. Also, these are entrepreneurs, so it might help you. And he was like, yeah. And it was such a cool conversation. And one of the things that they were like, okay, how do you keep up with all the people that you meet? And I was like,
Mhm.
this is going to sound super nerdy, but take notes, like big
There's
fan of
this thing called
CRMs.
a CRM.
Yeah, well, I was like, CRMs are like a big part of the business that we do, building
Right.
them and customizing them and stuff. But you can just have Google Docs for
Sure.
each person that you meet, and so that way you're keeping up with it. Because I was like, the goal is you're supposed to meet more people than you're able to keep up with. So that forces you to use some of these systems, so that way you can kind of track things and show up knowledgeable and be
Mhm.
top of mind. So that way they're top of mind and all that other stuff. So it was a cool conversation, like an hour and a half, and all of a sudden this person was like, okay, cool. Like, so I'm going to ask my question and then I got to go because I have a 6 o'clock class. And I was like,
Mm.
6 o'clock? Like, this is
Oh, I
weird.
remember that. Yeah.
And, but
Lab.
yeah, like it felt like about a 15-minute talk. So the fact that it was 90 minutes later
Yeah.
was awesome. Like people were taking furious notes. The teacher was like, hey, super nice to know that or he goes, I feel validated on so many of the things I talk to these, kids about, when it comes to networking. So that feels great. Thank you. And then he said, what else did he say? Oh, he goes, I think every kid here should go through this experience and learn this. And I was
Mhm.
like, that's awesome. Thank you. Hugely validating.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was great.
That's really funny, and I was thinking about that, when I was working at Inlon, we have TCU connections there, and I did a
Hmm.
talk for the business, MBA,
Hmm.
group that they have at TCU
Yeah.
about networking. Same thing, and the same thing, the teacher came up afterwards, he goes, "I'm just so glad to know what I'm teaching them is not garbage."
Yeah.
You said things that I tell them. And I was like, "Sweet. I'm glad I could help."
Yeah.
So, it
Because
is funny.
like that could have easily gone the other way, right? If he
Mhm.
was like grifty and stuff. And this guy actually went to school with Jeff, which was like very interesting. So like I'm kind of telling my background story about how Jeff and I worked together in the website thing. And he go, and I said Jeff Bowie, and he kind of sits back and I was like, do you know Jeff? And he was like, we were in elementary school pickup together. And I was
Holy
like,
cow.
oh my God.
Pickup
Okay.
line. That's
So
OG.
yeah, I was like, so once again, networking.
Yeah, right. So, as I was saying,
Yeah. Um, so it was great. Not, I mean, not like a huge group, but good group, right? It was more of like a let's push the tables together and talk through this thing. So
yeah.
yeah, kind of threw together a slide deck. People like how I broken it out because I was talking about the way that I think about it is not like do you network or do you not? It's like do you spend your networking digitally or do you spend your networking locally, and what are the differences and trade offs but between
Oh,
these
yeah,
things? And so
yeah.
I kind of approached that angle because and I'm glad that I did because I was talking about how I'm an introvert and how sometimes like in-person networking saps my battery, but
Mhm.
digital networking doesn't, right? Like I can do it all day long and it's not a problem
Clicked
at all.
by.
Yeah, exactly. And most of the people there were also like, "Oh, I'm an introvert" and stuff like that. So talking about it that way, I think, was probably the most beneficial for that group and for that audience, and it's really cool. It's very nice.
That's cool. I like that angle too, because it's kinda one of those things like everyone sells. Let's talk about how you sell, right?
Yeah.
Versus are you a salesperson or not? Same thing. We all
Hmm.
network in some way, shape, or form.
Yes.
It's
Like
just quality and quantity.
Yeah, like way back in the day at the Kung Fu school, like I was walking around being like, "Hey, what do you do?" Like not from like a let's see if there's overlap or synergistic,
Here comes
qualities or any of these
John.
things. Like it was just, "What do you do?" "Okay, well, I do this." "Oh, interesting. How long you been doing that?" Right? And so then it's like, "Oh, this is really all you're supposed to be doing is just kind of having small talk, like and having
Right.
coffee, and then when you find a well, you can dive into it."
Mm.
But yeah, it was. I'm proud of how it went, which
That
is
says
a
a
weird
lot.
thing to say. Yeah,
Well, hey,
yeah, for
if,
real.
if if John thinks his work is good, it must have been excellent. Because
Yeah, I don't really brag on myself all that often. I'm pretty
exactly.
proud of the of
Yeah.
of how yesterday went.
Nice, man. Well,
Thank
I
you.
I always enjoy those. I'm glad that you did too. Those are fun.
Oh,
I in fact I
yeah.
enjoy those more than because I've spoken at bigger platforms before in my way past, and I
Mm.
just always liked the smaller groups. It just felt more like more got done. It's more
It
intimate
was
and
cool.
yeah.
I brought a book, and I was like, whoever asks the best question is going to get a free copy of the book because I'm known as a guy who asks good questions, and so that brought in a bunch of really great stuff. Some people want to come hang out in the Slack community because I was talking about how different Slack communities are ran and stuff like that. And I was like, if you can't find one that you enjoy, build your own, and that's what we've
Yeah.
been doing and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
so, some people were hey, can we talk? And I'm like, absolutely, for sure, would love to. Just,
Yeah.
do it. And yeah, it was a blast. It was really, really fun.
Yep. Awesome, man.
Thank
I
you.
forgot that was yesterday. So very cool.
Yeah. We got a like a messaging and website revamp for a project that Melissa's been just smashing it on. So we got like the
Yeah, she
mock-up
is.
and all that stuff over for like approval yesterday, which is really good. Um, I do feel behind this week though, right? Because like I had some things that were supposed to happen that didn't, right? Like we were supposed to go do like a workshop for one of our clients to like do some interviews for some content and stuff like that. That
Mhm.
got moved, and like then I feel really behind, kind of thing. Because oftentimes when things fall off my calendar because I get ghosted or the schedule changes or something else like this, I'm not always the best about dropping back into like other work, right?
Mm.
Like my kind of natural thing is wait 6 minutes. If they're not there in 6 minutes, depending upon the platform, send an email, send a message, and then get off, right? Like go about my day. But sometimes, most probably more often than not, I'm like, ooh, okay, what am I going to work on, right? And then I'll spend some time looking for something to work on as opposed to having that next thing locked and loaded, and I can just kind of drop into there and
Yes.
do that. And
Yes.
that's a problem in my opinion, right? Like if that's
Yes.
happening a lot, because right now I'm doing some manual kind of like scrubbing and cleaning, trying to get some understanding for this one client that we're working on, which is taking up a little bit of time because it's more manual than I would like, but
Mhm.
it always is when you start out. So I feel a little bit behind as far as the work
Mhm.
goes. I think
Mhm.
it's been a week. I think the week has been good. Yeah, good, but just like I feel behind, which makes me uncomfortable.
Yeah, no, I get that too because I was telling somebody the other day that when I go someplace, I always bring a book because if they're late, I don't feel it as much because I've got something interesting in front of me, and so you're not like
Hmm.
that, tapping your foot, tapping like oh,
Yeah, absolutely.
and so when they show up, you're like legitimate, like oh hey, what's going on? Like there's
Yeah.
no pre like built kind of not animosity, but annoyance,
Hmm.
but it's also very effective. It's an easy way to knock out 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages of a book multiple times a week sometimes, and it's just boom, just more and more and more. But when you're talking about when someone bails, on a
Hmm.
call and you have a whole half hour, 45 minutes, an hour back, that I think that's harder
It
because you're
is.
like,
It's
you don't
because
want to start a
especially
project, right? 'Cause
exactly
it's not
right.
enough time.
And
Yeah.
And for me, right, like it might be okay, great. This one 30 or 45-minute call canceled in a series of three, right? So then it's
Right.
like, great. If it's a 30-minute call and I waited 10 minutes, now it's only 20 minutes, right? What am I going to
Yeah,
do for 20 minutes?
exactly. Exactly.
And then that time just evaporates
Yeah.
so quickly. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
That's a plug I'm still looking for because like sometimes I will just pick up whatever the book is, but then you get invested because if you get 10, 15 minutes into a book, you're like, okay, and then it's
Well,
time
if
to
it's a
stop.
good book, right? If it's a
Well,
good book.
true, true. But I try to only pick up recommended books,
I
essentially.
only read fire.
Hey, don't forget the Targaryens. Water is okay too. All right.
Well, like like rappers are always like, I only spit
Yeah.
fire,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
the idea that like I'm still reading Musashi. Well, I'm still saying that I'm reading Musashi, right? It's on the table, right?
For 6 months now.
Kinda, right? Like it's
I've got one
it's
of those.
it's interesting, but good lord, it's such a like
Yeah.
it's not fast, right? And one of the things that I've learned, like Melissa the other day, she goes, that some people when they read, they don't read the words to themselves, and I'm like, you
Mhm.
read the words to yourself, And she goes, she goes, are you one of these weirdos? And I was like,
I am too.
who's the weirdo?
Right.
Like why are you reading this inside of your head after your eyes have read it? That doesn't make any sense to me.
Right.
And so she was like, whoa, you're one of these weirdos. And I was like, I thought this was how everybody read, right? That
No, it's the only way to speed read. You actually can't get to speed reading without doing that.
yeah. So that I didn't realize that the
Hmm.
quality with which we read, right? Because like Melissa, for
Oh
as
yeah.
much as she reads like Melissa does an annual reading challenge, right?
Yeah.
I think this year was 50 books. She's already on 51, right?
Mhm.
Like that woman, she'll take a break from work and then she's just like up and like walking around and like reading on the Kindle app on her phone. She's got the library app, like 51 books so far, and we're in October. 50.
I'm at
50
60.
books.
I'm at
Are you
60.
really 60
Yeah.
books?
Yeah.
Dude,
Yeah.
that's
I
like
I'm telling you, once you learn to speed read, you can plow through books. So there's a great book. I think we talked about this the very first time around, and then it's called How to Read a Book. And there's the people, I guess, who know, Melissa's crowd is there's 5 ways to read a book, depending on your intention when you're going into the book. And so I'll be happy to lend it to y'all. I would be
interesting.
surprised if Melissa hadn't heard of it or read it, but it's actually, I think it's a homeschooling book, but it's one's for study, one's for pleasure, one's for perusal, one's for, I forget the categories now, but essentially the way she's talking about reading a book is for study, because you need to know the words so well in the context that they're reading
Yeah.
them that you can get the concept and can turn around and teach it. So you really have to sit in it. But the way
Yeah.
we read it is more, I think they call for perusal. You're looking for concepts.
Yeah.
So
That's that was an interesting conversation because like I've known that she reads more because I get enjoyment out of reading. I just don't, how do I say this? I don't how do I don't know what I'm trying to say here. Like she's looking for artistic quality and how it is written, right? A lot of time. And I'm just like, ooh, this is
okay,
good.
okay,
Next page. This is great. Right. So like she
okay.
gets mad at how fast I read, but she reads a lot more books than I do. I
She puts
don't
more
track
time
my
in it too.
books.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
yeah.
for real. Like I don't
Yeah.
track my books. I don't I should be doing a better job of that, honestly, but that just feels like one more thing to track. And then it's like this kind of weird thing of there for a while I was using Goodreads, right, as
Yeah,
like a way to kind
yeah,
of track my reading and stuff, and I
yeah.
really didn't like the UX of it. Or like
You're
I
right.
felt clunky and just
Yeah.
uncomfortable. And now apparently it's great, but for some reason I'm still resistant to like using it for tracking and like
Better,
writing the reviews that I write about the books that I read and stuff like that. So I don't
yeah.
know. It's interesting.
Better book club is a better UX for sure. Like that's the one I shared with you that we use.
Okay.
But I use Goodreads Forever also. So I have, I don't know, 300 books, 400 books in my Goodreads library that
Oh
have been
wow,
either
man.
marked or reviewed or something like that. But same thing. And it wasn't like horrible, but it definitely wasn't convenient. It
No,
wasn't
not convenient at
easy.
all.
So, and then Better Book Club is, I think it's more internal. I don't know if you
I
can go
think
look at
that's
public
yeah, I think
lists.
that's what you said. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of, which is fine as long as I can share it with my friends or be like, hey, what are you reading? Here, check my library, like that sort of
Yeah.
thing.
We like one of the things that I would like to potentially do for the Slack community is do a book club. And then maybe that tech would be helpful for facilitating the conversations around that. That could be
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. We like it. It's good.
Cool,
So,
man.
okay. So, oh yes. Okay. So here was the big question we were talking about on Monday, sort of, right?
mhm.
Because it's easy to track things that you're really, really focused on and always thinking about because you're like,
Yes.
is it working? Is it
Yeah.
working? It's
hmm
almost like you do it unconsciously and you just put it on paper so that everyone else can see you did it, but you're doing it all the time in your head.
Yeah.
Right. So for you, what's that for you? What's that thing for you that you never have to track? It's just always happening in your head.
Oh, meeting count. Like,
Meeting count. Okay.
yeah, like for me, like I always know if I have like 5 or less meetings on the calendar for that week, right? Between like networking and direct selling and stuff like that. And if I'm at
Okay.
4, like it's a like I won't even know that I know, but I'm like, "Ooh, something feels wrong." And I'll
Yeah.
go and I'll look and I'm like, "Okay, yeah." So like it's just like in my bones now at this point, like make sure you have enough meetings, make sure you have enough meetings. But like there's a whole lot to running a business other than just having meetings, kind of
Sure.
situation. So,
Sure. Well, so back to the atomic habits thing is, you and I talk about this too, is inputs. Inputs lead to outputs you like if the inputs are good. And so that's an input you track, right?
yeah.
Which is why it's so
Mhm.
important, because it's an input,
Yes.
leads to success, or should or can.
Yes. Mhm.
Interesting. Okay. So mine are engagements. So it's similar, but it doesn't have to be a meeting on the Zoom. Like it could be a conversation in a DM, as long as I consider it, like a targeted engagement, let's call
Hmm.
it. Because that's an input that leads to something like a meeting, or like a referral to a lead generator, or like that sort of thing, right? It
Mhm.
leads to something somewhere I want somebody to go to. Um,
I
yeah,
think I think that's a slippery slope,
sure. It has to be
right?
specific.
It has to be specific.
Yeah.
There was one week a long, long time ago. I was on the board of a Chamber of Commerce networking group, and so like I was part of the welcoming committee. If you wanted to join the group, you had to meet with at least 2 members of the
Yeah.
board and then one other person. And so there was one week where like I had 8 meetings just to kind of like get to know people and vet people for that group, and I was feeling amazing. And then I looked back at it and I was like, wait, that was a lot of time spent in meetings that were important but not actually important to like my end goals, right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
like huge fan of networking. Obviously I went and spoke on it last night, but if you're spending all of your time networking and you don't have paths to like
Yes.
getting referrals from those networking meetings, looking for synergy in those meetings, like diving in and going over LinkedIn connections together in those kind of meetings, you're going to do a whole lot of activity that doesn't lead to any kind of like revenue.
Yep.
And before anyone is like, and comes at me around this thing, you got to have both.
Yes. 100%.
Have to have both. Like
100%.
you
Yeah.
can, I know so many, I know so many entrepreneurs who have had to fold it up and go back to work because they spend all their time networking
Hmm.
and probably networking badly, right?
Yep.
How can I help you? And then like never making an ask, like not framing their referral asks well, like not
Sure.
really taking action in those meetings.
Sure.
So you have to have both. Like you need to go have direct selling conversations, right? You need to be in front of the people that you're trying to actually build relationships with and actually help, right? You can't always take the indirect route. Sometimes you need to be a little bit more direct because it's just easier.
This is actually why I liked originally when I got the Story Brand stuff via an email newsletter from a friend, like way back when I first saw it, specifically on website homepages. He talked about this concept that um, there's basically people are in 2 camps when they find out about you. They know you, they like you, they trust you, they actually want to talk to someone,
Hmm.
or they've just kind of heard about you and are educating themselves.
Yeah.
And you have to give people very specific call to actions to take the path that they're on. Give them the
Hmm.
opportunity to do both. Learn more about this thing because you're here, or call me and let's talk more because you're interested, right? And
Yes.
so
Hmm.
that's the website version, but like there's a networking version to that, right? Even
Yes.
yesterday I was on a networking call with someone Ann Small connected me to, and she had an issue that she went, and we talked about this. I gave her some from free consulting, right? Because she was stuck and it would take me 10 minutes to solve.
Yeah.
And with a good networking connection. And here's something that I have gotten a whole lot better at over the years that I just never knew was a problem, which is when they ask you, what can I do for you? Right? Because you're
Mm.
helping them. And then good networkers typically are like, great, hey, that's amazing. What are you looking for? Tell me more about what you need. Right.
Yep.
Okay. I used to never have a really good answer for that. It's because I was working on so
Yes.
many things, or
Mhm.
I'm
Anybody.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I wouldn't say anybody. I'd be like, you know what? I'm good. Just if you if you want to send more people
Been
my
there.
way, you know where I'm at, like, but I have now taken that approach. I have two things. Hey, if you want people that need help with this specifically, you can hire me for this. If not, this. Have them go
Yeah.
check out my LinkedIn newsletter to see what I'm up to. That way, I don't sit there and go, "Ugh," and I
Yeah.
think there's a problem too, because when you have someone on the other side and you've provided value for them, there's this reciprocity thing that happens, right?
Yes,
And if you
absolutely.
leave them with no way to give you value back, it almost feels like they've cheated you. Not like a big way, not like
Yeah.
I just sapped a bunch of their time and there's no way for me to help them because they can't tell me.
And for some people, that burns a lot brighter than others, right? Because like I'm very similar to you, right? If it's just information that I've gleaned on the path or read in a thing, like it's not even actually mine, you can have it because I found it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
If you want me to do it for you, or
Right.
if you want my help about how to apply this stuff to you, that's where we're going to start charging. And if
Yep.
it's like, man, I think I've given out, you know, like $1 million worth of advice just absolutely
Sure.
free, because it's like,
Sure.
this is 10 minutes, this is 15 minutes, and sometimes it's just like, well, have you thought about it this way? And they're like, oh, John, I gotta go. Okay, cool, see you later. What do I owe you? And it's like,
Yeah.
that's the thing that I don't like, right? Because I didn't come into this thing with an agenda that you're going to pay me at the end of it. You said you needed a little bit of help, and like it doesn't really feel like a big thing. Now, we were at the event yesterday, and we were talking about like messaging, right? And because like the question was, how do you get better at talking about what it is you do? And it was, reps, right? You need more at bats, you need to go talk to more people. And the he was like, yeah, but like, how do you talk about the value that you provide, right?
Hmm.
And we have a formula for this, right? Like, once you understand how you help people and stuff like that, you can put on the empathy hat, think about how those people are feeling, flip that, and those are your potential pain points. And then how do you tell a little story? Like, so like we have a formula about this.
Hmm.
I didn't go into the formula with him, but I was like, hey, you need to be rep driven, right? You need to go practice. Like, it's just like stand up comedy. You need to go bomb before you're going to crush and do all these other things. And it's about figuring it out, because every entrepreneur I know will like do like a new version, or they'll like uncover a version of their messaging, and they're like, yeah, look how great it is. And then a couple of years later, when they go through that process again and it gets even better, like that's reps, like all of that knowledge, all that, oh, there it is, like that, when you lock into it and it just goes soup, and you know exactly how to talk about yourself. Like, you can only find that by going out and doing it a bunch, in my opinion. um
Yeah, well, yesterday I was teaching a sales team and there was about 6 like 10, 15-year in sales reps. They were doing very well. Good
mhm,
job. We were talking about sending emails
mhm,
when they've been engaged, and how to respond and things like that. And we were talking about the call to action kind of at the end of your email.
mhm.
And it was so funny because I had them role playing and said, okay, we've got this client who has this situation, and you're sending this amount of this information to them because this is probably, we're anticipating this is a need that they're going to have in this next step, and so let's go ahead and educate them on that. And okay, now what's your
Yeah.
call to action, right? And so I just had them like spouting ones off, and everyone, it was me, I, for me, like, and all the calls to action were about, hey, I would like, hey, can I blah 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 blah
Yeah,
blah.
I would love to.
Yes,
And I
yes.
find myself like that, for some reason, that's beat into me as well. Like I don't even know
Oh,
where it came from, because like I'm
it's
not
human
that
nature, I
person,
think.
right?
Yeah.
But I
Me.
work hard to pull those things out of it, right?
Yes.
And like I was talking about this on Sales Lab actually yesterday, because one of the persons in a rep was like, would you mind if? And I was
Right.
like, okay, cool. What if it? Yeah, I mind.
Right. That's weak sales language.
And he was just like,
I
what? And I
think
was like,
maybe.
he goes, well, no one's ever told me no. And I was like, they will, right?
Mhm.
Like, if you
And
cold
even
call
if they
someone,
haven't, you now look like you don't know what you're talking about a little bit. You
yes,
just chipped
right?
away a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah. And would it make sense? Would it would it make sense to have a conversation? Like, I mind
Right.
lots of things. I will still go do them because I need to go do them because they make sense in the grander scheme of things, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so like that language, I use a lot. And there's a bunch of people on LinkedIn right now who are talking about this thing about like, stop asking people if it makes sense. You need to check understanding, right, at certain points of a
Right.
call. Now,
Right.
there's lots of reps who are not comfortable in their talking points in their talk tracks, right? And so they're overusing that. Well, does that make
Right.
sense? Okay,
Sure. Sure.
and then we do this. Does that make sense? And then this happens, and then does that make sense?
Yeah.
But if you're covering something technical, if you're covering a proposal, if you're trying to like get your way of thinking across, you better be checking understanding. You just need to
Right.
do it with good tonality and at the right amount of like cadence and pacing.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do think there's a line where you, like you said, it can happen too much because it can sound like you're don't know what you're talking about if you keep asking. Does that make sense? Do you
Absolutely.
understand? Did I say
Yeah.
that right? It's like it makes you sound like you're like not
Hmm.
confident. Like, but when you do it, so one of the things that Marcus has taught us is as we're kind of doing that gap selling sort of mentality where you're looking for where the
Hmm.
missing, where the tension is, and then you find it and you see that light bulb go off in their head, and then he says, so we should we talk about how we can solve that together, which is another way to say,
Yes.
does it make sense to move
Yeah.
forward in a conversation? Or it's the same thing, it's the cadence and it's the timing, right? And that we understand now where we're at. Should we talk about next steps together?
Yeah. One of my favorite books, High Probability Selling, he goes, like, if they bring something up, he goes, should we talk about that? But he says it in a very kind of like tonal, neutral structure because he doesn't want to talk them into it or talk them out of it. He just wants to know if they want to talk about it because they brought it up, right? So, well, this happens, but we really don't want that to happen. Oh, should we talk more about that?
Right.
Sounds like that's really important to you.
Yep.
You
Exactly.
know,
Okay. So Mike Simmons is saying he's
not
big on makes sense, but not does that make sense though? Probably for the same. Mike, tell us why that is, because probably for the same reason. Because I've heard that when you say does that make sense, it just makes you sound less confident. Whereas it says makes sense, it's more like agreement. So I don't know about you, John, but I'd be curious to hear some phrases that other good salespeople use to get understanding. Because I'm sure there's a ton of them out there. You know.
yeah,
Interesting. Okay. So
interesting.
he says, would it is very different than does something make sense. It's
Hmm.
true. That's true. So for me, when you say would this make sense, you're actually
Those are
pushing
next steps.
yeah, you're pushing forward
Like for me,
action. Whereas
yeah.
does something make sense is checking for understanding first.
Yeah.
Right.
Like if I'm like, "Hey, would it make sense to schedule the next meeting?" That's always for me very very action oriented language about like next steps and trying to
Right.
get um, you know, the
Hmm.
next thing in there. Uh does that
But
make sense?
yeah.
That's interesting. Like the other side of it is that as a coach and I'm talking about these concepts with people, um not about do you understand? Interesting. Um
Give us more, Mike. You must be typing on your phone in the car.
Yeah, I
Does it?
lost my thread. I don't remember where I was going. It is about next steps. Okay.
Okay.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
if I'm like saying, okay, cool. Well, here's how we think about the sales process, right? It's way less about being, a manipulator and way more about like time management, looking for alignment, and then qualifying for good fits.
Hmm.
Does that make sense? Right? Like I
Okay. So here's where I'm with you on this, because I've just recently learned this. So this is an interesting topic for me to talk about. Is
okay.
that when you are running a discovery conversation, the goal is to get them, ideally not to tell them what they need, but to get them to discover where the gap is themselves.
Hmm.
That's where what Mike's saying makes sense, because you're not having to check for understanding because they just told you. They were the one that offered
Agreed.
the information, and so, okay,
Yeah.
does it make sense then too, or would it make
Yeah.
sense too? Then that makes sense. You're always pushing the conversation forward. I think the moment I'm thinking of specifically is when they're just not getting there without you kind of going, well, it looks like to me that this might be a problem.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
To me,
I think
that's where it makes sense
stepping
to say
in.
something like that and not look like there's a lack of confidence. Because in that context, you're asking for understanding, not going, did I explain it all right? Like,
Fair, yeah. Like if you're I think that that can be done tonally though, right? Like, does that make sense? Versus, does that make sense? Like one of them feels
true.
like
Yeah.
I'm seeking validation, and the other one is like checking for understanding, and
It's
how I think
true,
about
but
it.
I also think if you use it too often, it can lean to the
Oh man, You know,
no matter the
use any
tonality.
word too many times, it loses its meaning, you know?
Yeah.
And then there was someone who was posting the other day, and he goes, "Stop saying, well, that makes sense in your discovery calls," which I was like, "Oh, this is a very interesting topic." And then
Mm.
because I agree with that, right? If someone is like, "Oh yeah, we're really struggling with this thing," and the sales rep like, "Oh well, that makes sense." They just told you where their motivation is and where their pain is. You need to jump into that thing with them, right? And like, don't play dumb, which is what a sales coach told me once. But like, oh,
Right.
interesting.
Yeah.
How is that showing up in the business? Can you
Mhm.
tell me about that?
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think on some levels that well that makes sense, right? Is helpful, but once
Yeah.
again, too much, you're shutting off the depth of your discovery that you really need to have good rapport and trust, I would say.
Yeah, definitely. As I'm thinking right now, what one of my fellow coaches uses, "Are we tracking?" Are we tracking there?
Ooh, that's
Like,
such a military thing. Oh
yeah, it
man,
is. Well,
that
and
snapped me back, man. You tracking?
well, and
Tracking hill?
I've got
Nope.
2, on staff with me that are former military, so that's
Yeah.
probably where it comes from. But I do like it because it's not a, "Did I do a good job?" Is, "Are we on the same page? Are we tracking?" You know?
See,
You have
and
context.
yeah, I have context, right? If someone like that would pull me out of a good conversation because I kind of hate that. Are we tracking? Like that's like, are we clear? I don't like that either.
Yeah. Are
Not
we
a huge fan of
aligned?
that. Are we
But even
aligned?
that can get that's why I think variety. I think the key here is variety in words and
Yes.
tonality is what
Yeah.
really gives you the best conversational trust building way to do
And then
this.
also like body language, right? Because so much of this is happening at a nonverbal level. So like if they're in there and they're like, oh,
Mhm,
and doing this and they got the big saucer eyes and they're just nodding at you and they're kind of like
mhm.
matching and mirroring off of you because they're just so bought in and everything, you don't need to ask as many times. Does that make sense? But if they're
Right.
like, hmm,
Mhm.
right? Like these are different behaviors that like and a lot of the sales EQ stuff, in my opinion, is read that stuff, understand where that is, and then if they're saying, "Hey, I think I might have lost you. What did I miss?" You know, then we
Yep.
can jump into it from there. Right, but if they get too excited, I'm like, well, hold on. Like, there's some hard parts to this. It's not all rainbows and great sales questions. Sometimes we have to actually go out and get rejected a couple of times. So are
Yeah.
you open for that?
Yep.
What about on the phone with no body
Yep. I was
language?
about to ask that.
Ooh,
Me too,
great
Mike.
question.
Same thing.
Great
Yeah,
question.
tonality has a lot to do with it.
Yeah, tonality and cadence, right? Like when
Mhm.
someone is uncomfortable in a phone call, right? Like if you're really paying attention. Now,
Yep.
lots of people who were like radical transparency, like don't pick up on that stuff because all kinds of different reasons around that. But yeah, I think it's harder on the phone because you can't see
Mhm.
them. You can't see their face change and stuff like that. But then
That's
on
right.
the on the other side of that, for some people, it makes them more confident, right? Like not actually being in front of someone and things like that. So
That's true. I think, there definitely is a hierarchy, is in person or on Zoom are definitely number 1. It's the best way for both parties to understand what's going on and
yeah,
get the best conversation, and then phone second, and then any sort of text third, and then
email is way down that list, right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you
and
lose
DMs
the
and
you
emails
lose
are
the
all,
tonality. Yeah,
yeah, you're losing everything. I hate,
yeah,
like, one of the good things that I like is we use Slack and we use video internally, and so if we have something to say, we just pop a quick video in Slack. Like,
that's
we don't
nice.
do a lot of text because we really value that, nonverbal and tonality and stuff like that. So
I a woman who I've done some work with on both sides, right? I've coached her, she's coached me. Um, she's like a big fan of emojis, right? And I'm like, oh god, like the emoji thing, I just can't go with you, right? Like I'll
yeah.
do it in a post, right?
Mhm.
Because I think it helps, but like I don't really use it just like in normal regular communication and stuff. And she was
Great
like,
tool.
can't tell if you're mad.
Yeah.
Can I get a smiley face, right? And so now I'm like,
Yeah.
okay, I do see how you can kind of control the tone a little bit with some emojis and stuff like
Yeah.
that. So that's
Yeah.
that's been an interesting thing.
Yeah, that's just a use case tool, right? I think probably it's because what most people that used it, like, vomited them all over us, and we were like, "Okay,
For
done with
real. Yeah,
emojis,"
for
like,
sure.
versus because I definitely use emojis, but that's probably more because I've got the eye, you know?
Oh, that's for sure, my friend.
Yeah, 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 exactly.
I'll sometimes put like if I have to write an email that I'm concerned is going to come across with like bad tone, I'll put insert coaching tone here, right? And then I'll go into like what I'm kind of putting in there just to make sure that like they understand it the right way. Yeah. So that's interesting.
Yep, for sure.
Oh, man, how did we get into that? Makes sense.
I have no idea.
Okay.
It's a good conversation, though.
It is a good conversation.
So let's circle back with what we were actually ideally going to get to here, because I think
goal setting, goal changing. Because like I bailed on one of my goals this year for sure, because I had it in my head that I wanted to make like a Sherpa coin that got you access to like, if you had this coin, everyone on your team got access, blah blah blah, you know. Right. And I thought it was very cool because like crypto was on this massive thing, and then the bottom fell out, and I was like, yeah, I don't really want to do this anymore. Makes sense to watch the recording, probably, Mike. Always, actually, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, because you won't understand what we're talking about unless you do. You just jump in. Yeah, you know, we're like a stand-up comedian. We're like, who's that comedian that does that all the time? Where he'll start and you'll have this long story, and then at the end of it there'll be a punchline. But if you're not in it for like the 9 minutes the joke takes, you will not get the punchline.
Yes, like I think that's all really good comedy, right? And Seinfeld said this thing on one of his shows of like the best comedy never gets to where you think it's going, right? Like, and when you go back and you watch like really good things, they're just talking about something happening and there's momentum and it just keeps going and changing. And then this thing happened, and then that you know, and but like it never actually gets to the thing until the very end. Oh man, like I love whenever that happens.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think
challenge coin. Interesting. Challenge coin is in my knowledge of it is a very military thing. That's interesting. Yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking, like how I was thinking about it in my head, but like the ability of placing it on a marketplace that, you know, as I am growing the brand and doing this stuff, it increases the value of the coin. So if someone decides that they don't want that coin anymore, they can sell it to someone else, and I get a cut of that thing.
Community. Yep. I'm in a community that uses those. Joe, what's his name? He's a content godfather. He's been around forever. Joe. Anyway, I'll think of it. I'll tell you who it is. But I have when you join his community and you get approved, he automatically gives you 5 coins, I think, of his. And then same thing. You have to sell it if you leave the community. They're just forfeited, and you can sell them if you want, but if you won't sell them, they're just forfeited. So you don't get them. That's interesting. Yeah, but he has a big audience. So okay, so you dropped that goal, but for good reason, probably.
That's right. But here's the thing: I didn't replace it with a different goal. I was like, oh, cool. I'm just not going to do this. You know?
Yeah, I don't think you have to. Yeah.
Man,
well, so this is where we go. Just because you drop a goal doesn't mean that there's a huge gap in your business now. It just means that goal, for some reason, we've decided that it's not good for today or ever, right? We've just gone, okay. Yeah. So you can expand your amount of like steam around another goal you already have. It just gives you more hours on that.
Well, that is the thing that I'm really trying to get to, right? Is that good goal setting and good goal planning, right, is about making good use of the time. See you later, Mike Simmons. I hope you enjoy your golf today and this weekend. Get some good swings in.
Sweet.
Big golfer. Where was I? Sorry, I got sidetracked.
Put more steam into another goal.
Yes. Okay. So I had a big sales goal, right? We're past that. It's not a huge deal. The other goals were about like team and all that stuff, and those things are going well. What?
I almost had coffee out the nose. You were like, we had a big sales go. It's no big deal. It's a big sales go. Like, not a big deal. We moved on from that.
One of my coaches
nodded, like
one of my coaches, he like this is maybe like my second or third week in sales training, way back in the day. And this guy comes in and he sells casters, right? And the guy's like, man, I'm never going to hit. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And industrial casters for like 3-ton machinery and stuff like this. And he's like a field reps, right? So he's out there wilding out like road warrior. Like you can't, like he's the lone wolf, baby, that kind of person. And he was talking about his quota and how he didn't feel it was achievable. And this one sales coach, he goes, man, what a gift. And I'm like, I'm in the room. I'm not really paying attention to this conversation, but because I have huge ears, I can't not hear it. And so I'm like, what an interesting thing, right? And so then he finishes that conversation. I was like, what do you mean by that? And he goes, man, the bigger the goal, the more important it is, right? So like if you have a big goal and you're able to hit it, like that makes you indispensable to the organization that you're working with and stuff. And like he just had such like a, because before that thing, I was like, quota is stupid, it is a waste of time, blah 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 blah. And I know lots of people who still say that like quota is like not the appropriate lever, and there is something to that, but deadlines make the magic happen.
Deadlines make deals.
Yeah, deadlines make deals, right? And like if you have forever to figure it out, you're probably like, this is why the 12-week year was such an important like book of like, oh, let's just turn these into 12-week sprints, and then we can kind of go around and do those things. So
yeah,
you know, I didn't adjust any of my other goals, right? Like I've gotten other stuff done, which is nice and validating and everything. But being a goal driven person, I kind of feel like, I let myself, and this is me trying to think about how I would coach someone else around this thing, right? I would be like, okay, cool. Like what else are you leaning into then, since you're taking this goal out and that should free up some time. The other side of that is you don't have to fill every minute with productive things.
That's what I was going to go.
Right?
I was like,
I know.
People who are goal driven like us often over goal. And so when we drop a goal, it's because we needed to.
Man, and to that end, dude, like I need to get some training back into my life, right? Because like I feel really want to go, like it's so weird because I have some people that I can go do kung fu with, right? If I work hard enough, right? Not going to go back to the school. Or I can go do jujitsu, right? And where we live now is super far away from where I started to do jujitsu. So I would want to look for a different teacher and coach and everything like that. And for whatever reason, it's just super easy to be like, I'll do that later kind of thing. So I'm kind of slacking on that a lot, which is frustrating and irritating. And this guy, he's qualifying me, right? We're having this DM back and forth, and that he goes, he's a fitness coach, right? And so he goes, hey, he's warming me up. Hey, where are you from? Texas. Oh, okay, cool. I'm in Toronto. You ever been? No, man, I haven't. And he goes, okay, cool. He goes, what do you do in Texas? You play sports? And I said, no, I'm more of a martial arts guy. And he goes, okay, so your fitness journey is going well then? ?
Assumption. Yeah.
Yeah. Huge, big assumptive like statement. And I said, interesting question and wording.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
Of course I did. I said, interesting question and wording. I'm a sales coach and can't decide how I feel about it. And he goes, what makes you say that? And I'm like, okay. Now it's just boring. But what an interesting boring question.
He just opened himself up for coaching by saying, why is that?
No, he didn't. Like there.
He was still trying to get his hooks in you. You think? That's cynical, John.
Maybe.
Like optimistic Jake would go, oh, okay, there's a small window. I'll say something back and see if he takes it.
Optimistic John has been helping people who have bad DM strategies for 5 years now. You know how many people have like taken the advice and been like, oh, this has actually been helpful? Maybe 2.
Yeah. Well, that's why I wouldn't put much time on it. I would throw one piece of advice his way and keep going with the conversation as normal.
That's fair.
That's what I would do, man. Because I do want to help. That's a way that I used to be that too. I was like, well, I'm not helping them. They don't want help. But if they ask, I'll give you something.
I went the other way, right? I was like, hey man, I do this all the time. Like, just saying it, like I'm concerned about how much volume you're gonna have to do if this is how you're messaging people, Well,
you did.
No. Like that's where I started, right?
Okay.
And then as a salesperson myself, right? Whenever I reach out to marketers and they're like, how dare you think I could be a prospect for you? Don't you know that I'm in marketing? Yeah, that's exactly why I did the reach out, honestly, because you guys are terrible at the sales thing, no matter what you think about it. And and then those people want to give me feedback, right? Oh man, I'm not in your target market. Yeah, you are. You just are not a fit, which is okay. So I don't want it done to me, right? Thank you, and just move on. Thank you, and just move on. So this was just me being like, oh, like I was what, like, because I can't decide if I love that and how we phrase it or if I hated it. really is what it breaks down to. So that's why I was like, oh, this is interesting. Let me just call this out and make everybody uncomfortable, right? So I do the thing where I'm like, hey, I can't decide if I like this or hate this. So super assumptive, like, but like on the other thing, right, is that when he assumes the positive, most people are going to go in the negative direction, right? So like, is he trying to use like NLP and negative psychology badly, or is he like, is this how he communicates? Like, I'm not really like, I'm not ramped up about the question itself. I'm just kind of curious how he got there.
Sure.
Like, is this a question he asks everybody?
Yeah.
That's
well, and you're right. I mean, that's absolutely something that certain people teach, is you make an assumption
for sure,
so that you'll get a rise, you know?
Oh yeah. That's dark side. That's dark side stuff. Yeah, it can. But the more you have to push them in that direction, the faster they're going to come back to the mean, right? So this is where buyer's remorse shows up, right? Let's just go ahead and do this, and you talk them into it, and then before you get back to the office,
tactic, yes, but I don't mind it.
It's lots of salespeople.
Yeah. No, I agree. I'm just saying I don't mind that tactic. I don't think as a small piece of getting me snapped into the conversation.
No, like, not at all.
Yeah, but yes, if that's what your whole tactic or like your whole tone is, then buyer's remorse is coming.
Exactly, right. And I've known people who have leaned way too much into technique, and they'll get orders, and by the time they get back to the office to like put in the PO and everything, there's an email waiting for them. Hey, let's wait on this.
Yep.
Right. And it's because they left, and now this person feels comfortable being honest with you, and they didn't feel comfortable because of the pressure of the moment, the questions you were asking, the emotional state that you put them in. So
for sure.
Anyway, man,
all right,
this has been a rad chat. We've not actually like helped each other in a meaningful way or anything, but it's been an interesting conversation.
This is all warm up for this afternoon. That's what this is. The real stuff's happen later.
Are we gonna live stream the happy hour? Is that what we're doing? If you guys want to hang out this afternoon for a happy hour, just comment in the thread.
That's right.
Crickets.
If we see some comments in here, we may bring out the
mobile recording studio.
That's right. I got my little setup right here. Okay, so but let's actually set this up for next week though, for real, because it's Q4. We both have goals.
Yeah.
At least one, and we want to get there. And so let's talk about let's tee up next week.
Well, okay, but hold on a second. Before we get too excited about this, you're not even here next Friday or the Monday after that.
Yeah, I know.
So I will be here next Friday, guys, and we're gonna have Sebastian on, who is a big time sales nerd. Very, very cool conversation. We hung out at SaaStr, and just the way that he talks about revenue and building the teams, his content is super good. So he's gonna fill in for Jake as the co-host next Friday, which I'm excited about. Because Jake has got to go do some training, and then you're out the following Monday after that as well. So yeah,
we got an executive retreat after that, but I'm going to be it.
Man, why am I not going on executive retreats? Oh, that's right. The executive doesn't think it's worth it.
It's true. Maybe to his detriment, because I love executive retreats. I think they're amazing.
I think it would be a ton of fun, but like, it's
as
always a retreat. When it's
as opposed to like just a standard conference event, which I think those 1 in 10 of those are good. I think 3 to 5 of 10 executive retreats, because they're more targeted at the type of problems that executives have versus just, hey, everyone, this is our subject. This is our area. Let's do some tracks. And, because we talked about this, it's more about the networking and who you meet at the conference event. Whereas the executive retreats is more about the material, or not more. But it is. There's more material.
It is about the material for sure, right? Like it's very inwardly focused, right? Like you said that statement that like lots of conferences are bad. The only ones that are bad are the ones you don't work well, in my opinion, right? Like
I'm at the conference themselves, that like the material and
sure, but like I'm there on a mission, right? Like I'm there looking for like new people to network with, and looking for leads and opportunities and stuff like that. So like at SaaStr.
We could say that about the grocery store, like I can go find someone to network.
But that's not a target-rich environment, though.
Depends on the grocery store and what your target market is. See?
John, I promise if you're going
Sprouts
to the
in Southlake is a good executive place.
Tom Thumb in San Francisco, bro, you're gonna run into some VCs, right? Just be
That's
super
right.
easy to sell your idea.
Yeah,
Maybe.
yeah.
I don't know.
Elevators too.
Just jumping into the elevator. Ooh, maybe
Yeah.
you'll listen to me.
Dude, that's a bit. That's a bit for Saturday Night Live right there.
For sure. Yeah, they won't do it though. They've
No.
lost the magic. Actually, I don't even know. I haven't seen the show in a number of years.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna hang out later today, 2:30ish. What
Mhm.
else do you have on the calendar today between now and then?
Several things. I've got my 3-month check-in. It's been 90 days.
Oh, okay.
Actually,
How
it's
do
been
you
more than
how
90
do
days.
you think you've done over the course of your 90 days? Like if you were in, and I'm sure that a part of this process is you're gonna have to grade yourself, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah,
here's your first rep of this thing. How do you think you've
yeah.
done?
Yeah, I'm at an 8. I think what I've been given as far as material and processes, I've absolutely crushed. I think I've blown through that stuff, and I
Nice.
actually added
You
some
also
additional
don't
value.
brag a whole lot about your work and stuff like that. So that's pretty big talk coming from Jake Jordan.
Yeah, and I guess the reason I say that is because I've even added to the process pieces that they have now made part of their process moving forward to hire coaches.
Yeah,
So
that's
found the
huge,
holes,
man.
put some gaps in there. The two additional points are I did not get on the focus train for sales and coaching weeks back and forth. So I was kind of like in some of that
Scattered.
overwhelm the first
Yeah.
6 to 7 weeks. And especially since we had some structure changes internally and new bosses and some different things moving around, that made it even a little bit more kind of hectic. But it was never hectic by any means. But
Was
so,
there an expectation of like, hey, this is a lot of information. You're gonna need to find a way to kind of balance it all out, or
oh yeah,
like, well, but here's what I'm saying though, right?
yeah,
When you go into that thing and they're like, cool, start drinking from the fire hose. There's a lot to
mhm,
learn. There's a
mhm,
lot to learn.
mhm, mhm.
It sounds like you came to the conclusion of like, ooh, I need to break this into a sales week
Yes,
and then a coaching week, sales
yes,
week, coaching week.
yes,
So if they didn't give you that and you had to go figure it out, I
yeah.
don't think that like is a point detraction. That's an opportunity for them to improve their like onboarding and ramp up processes.
True, true, but I was also grading my own performance, and I think because I
Okay.
didn't have those sets, that my performance wasn't as high as it could be personally, just me from my side.
Mm-hmm.
That's all. Yeah. So, but no, I mean, they gave us 8 weeks to do nothing but train, read, role play. Like it's more than I've ever seen anywhere to go into
I
a role
think your
for 8
boss should
weeks.
talk to my boss. I would love 8 weeks of just like reading and learning and everything.
Mhm.
Yeah,
That's
that
what they
would be
prepped me
fantastic.
for. Yeah. So, and I think because I was going into a more leadership position, they gave me more time to become familiar with the systems, because I think it's more like 6 weeks for just
Yeah.
another role. But still, 6 weeks is a long time for you to be able to sit in and just observe and role play and test. And because I can tell you, I've had a week or less in multiple
Oh man,
occasions,
I've
or at
I've had
best,
I've had an hour or
day.
less
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
certain situations. All right, champ, you got this. Oh,
Yep.
well,
Here's the book. Let me know if
yeah,
questions you have.
yeah. So I mean, like I think lots of people get wrapped up in like onboarding and ramp up and like just trying to like boil it down to like as tight as possible. Like people,
Mm,
one of my favorite things is I was on a project and this woman was talking about how this is strategic work, which means that it takes time. It doesn't show up immediately under pressure. So we've had a great conversation. Give us some time to go be strategic and think through this stuff,
yeah.
and like learning is the same thing,
Mhm.
there's you need to apply quickly so that way it's still like sharp and
Yes.
grabbable and stuff like that,
Yes.
but you also need time to kind of sit and think and like how are you going to do it your way and be consistent with it.
Yep.
So
Yep. Yep. A lot of good things I learned from this onboarding process. So overall, I'm happy with it. And I did get
why are you
into
not a 9?
That's a good question.
Thank you. That's why I get paid the mediocre bucks.
That's right. That's right. Uh,
According to Alice, I am mediocrely famous,
yes.
right? We
Yes.
had that conversation the other day. That was fascinating.
Yes. I had a similar experience where Scarlett called me a LinkedIn baller, like a year and a half ago. let's see. I don't know. I don't know why I'm not in the 9. It was more of a gut feel. It wasn't tied to
Okay. At
specifics.
least you didn't pick 7. 7 is like the most
I know.
non-committal, right?
I know.
And
We
I
do
do
that
that
too.
to people, and it makes them mad. I'm like, okay, cool. Scale of 1 to 10, you can't pick 7.
Yeah. Well, so what I do
Cool.
is I wait for them to pick 7, and I go, okay, great. If you couldn't pick 7, would you be a 6 or an 8? And
Yeah,
so
no, I
then it
don't do
makes
that.
them
I like
go,
that, but I don't do that.
whoa, okay,
Yeah.
maybe I'm not a 7. Like, oh no, I'm actually doing pretty good. And maybe I'm closer to an 8. Okay, tell me about that.
Yep.
Yeah. I don't know.
That's
I
good
don't have
stuff.
an 8 to a 9. I did this yesterday actually on a call. I was talking about getting people on video, and they were having a hard time getting subject matter experts on camera to feel loose because we actually watched some of their videos, interviews for bios and stuff. And I said, what I'll do is I'll sit down and I'll say, hey, how you feeling today? Good. 1 to 10 energy level. How you feeling right now? A 5. Okay. What would a 6 or a 7 feel like to you? Like,
Yep.
if you were a 6 or a 7, what would that feel like? And they just start doing 6 or 7.
Yes. Yeah.
And he said, so that's a cheat code to bring energy up on camera 1 or 2 notches.
Mhm.
And so same idea. It's like, what would it be like?
Yes.
So
What would that feel like? What would
what would
that
that
look
feel
like? Well, it looks like this. Interesting. You think you can get there now? Right. And
like?
I do this, and I used to do this a lot more as like a sales technique. Okay, scale of 1 to 10. 1,
Mhm.
you're kicking me out. 10, you're
Yeah.
asking for paperwork. Where
Right.
are we? Well,
Yeah.
I'm at a 7. Interesting, right? And then back then, because I was dark side, John, why aren't you a 6? Right, which would force them to talk glowingly and positively about what they were
Yeah.
hearing, and so that
Yeah.
way they would talk themselves into a 7. Well, or I'm sorry, an 8, and
Yeah.
then I'd be like, well, I've only got a little bit more to talk about here. Like, do you think we're going to get the 10? Do you need to be at 10 to feel comfortable moving forward?
Right.
Well, actually, I think I'm probably okay now. Okay, cool. What should we do then? Right. And they've done all the work. I'm just kind of facilitating the questions and the backstops.
Yep. For sure. Same. That's part of what we do when people feel like they're teetering still. It's like, where would you say you're at? You're 7. Great. What would need to happen to be an 8 or a
Yes.
9?
That little nudge off of the fence kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah. Super
Yeah.
important.
Well, I'd have to blah, blah, blah. Okay. Can we talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah.
Or
And so,
yeah.
and salespeople who were like, oh, I'm at a 7. That means I'm close.
Right.
Maybe not.
Yeah. That could be a kind 7 because they want to end the call favorably. That could be a
Yes,
5.
absolutely. That could be, yeah. You could be a 3, but if you're dealing with an S, you're gonna you don't
Mhm.
really know where you are unless you
Yeah.
ask and really dive into it with them, for sure.
Yeah. Exactly.
All right, man. We got to go
Yeah.
do some work and be productive before we hang out again later on
And
this
are
afternoon.
not productive then. Yeah. So
Yeah.
what's
Doesn't it feel weird that we're gonna see each other twice? I count this as seeing you, right? And so
the
I'm
eye
like
Jake does not think it's weird at all.
I'm like, man, we're gonna hang out twice today. Is it because I can't help myself? Is that the best use of our time? Like, I just can't not do it. I'm excited to see you though.
Which is hilarious because it's like I haven't seen you in person in over a year for sure. And
Yeah.
like, is that the best use of our time? Can I see Jake
Yeah.
in person once a year? Is that worth
I
it?
think I had short hair the last time we hung out.
I think you're right.
It might have
I don't
been
know. I don't
it
know.
might have been that like awkward stoic growing out phase that I had there for a while where, it was just all over the place.
Could be.
But yeah, no, I am excited to meet you, hang out with you in person. Like
It has
I
been a
just
long
can't
time when that's what
I
you
just can't help
think.
myself. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So Jake, thank you so much
Yes.
for inviting me in. I've got the
Hey,
next
we've
7
chatted
hours.
a bunch of times online, so I'm excited to finally meet you in person. Yeah.
Oh my God. It's gonna be
What's
so
your
good.
day? What do you got going on?
So I needed to move a call the other day. So I'm doing coaching call, lunch club call, sales call, coaching call, hang out with you.
Sweet.
That's what I got. And I have one thing in here that somehow got scheduled during our hangout that I'm going to need to cancel or move. So, oh yeah, I remember that. Okay, yeah. So supposed to have a call during our hangout time. Obviously, I'm going to move that.
Mhm.
And then do I have something on Saturday? Oh yeah, I'm meeting a guy named Justin tomorrow because I used to do sales training with him. He's the guy who came into Sherpa Slack, I think last week or the week before, because I'm going to give him his copy of the book. Anyone I've trained with in either kung fu or selling or like poker gets a free
Oh,
copy of the book.
bring me a book. I don't have one.
You don't have a really?
I haven't seen you since the book came out. I have a
Is that
digital
true?
copy. Yeah. I have a digital copy that
Whoa.
you sent me before it went live, but it was
Okay.
even then it wasn't done.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's
So I can't.
man. I
Where's
feel
that
like a
on camera?
terrible. I feel like a terrible friend now.
Oh
I'm a
no,
garbage bill.
nah.
Nah. I will bring you a book today, sir.
No, you're like 12%
Absolutely.
garbage, Bill. That's all. Like
12%? Okay.
yeah.
What would 13 look like?
This. I just earned cool points with the kids for that, right?
Maybe,
Or
you
not.
know.
I just got dad joked. That's the category I just fell in.
Exactly. Yeah, you and Dylan are now like on the same level, which is nice.
And I have found his source for jokes, by the way.
Have
Dylan, I
you?
see. I have found them. Yes, at least a fair amount of them because I went to post 2 of them and they already posted. I was like, I know who he's watching.
One of
Chicken and
the
the egg. I'll let you
one
know.
of what's becoming one of the vetting part of joining the Sherpa Slack is you must show up with a dad joke, which I think
Yes.
is super fun and
So
interesting,
fun.
especially
So
after last week of talking with Bethany Handy around like, and this has been rattling around in my head, right? Your
yeah.
community, and I have it over here on the thing. It's the rituals and celebrations that you lean into, right?
Yep.
So like
Yep.
that little dad joke thing is
It's a ritual.
interesting. Yeah, it's a
Yep.
ritual,
Yep.
so it's cool.
Yep. Yep.
So
Cool.
yeah, we gotta
Awesome, man.
go.
We gotta
Yes,
go.
I will
Yep.
see you in a bit. I'm gonna bring you a book.
I would love that.
Absolutely. That's
Awesome, man.
very exciting. Now I'm super stoked to see you twice in one day. Productivity be damned.
Well, because now you get to pass the book off. It doesn't matter who's on the other
Yeah,
end of it. You get to pass
exactly.
it.
I get to go tell my boss, hey, I had a qualified meeting because I gave them the book. They asked me for the book, boss. We got one, right?
Right.
Like holding out
On the hook. Yes. Yes. Yeah, he was
let me go
floundering before, but
update my pipe drive with Bake Borden, this new
Mhm.
prospect that I met with today,
Fake
just changing the
Borden.
names.
That's right. Very much.
Oh my god. Okay, cool.
All right.
Let's talk later on today, man. Thank you.
Okay. See you soon.
See everybody. Thanks, Bill.
Bye, guys. Thanks for joining us.
Yes, thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike Towell. Thanks, Mike Simmons. Thanks, everyone else. You guys are awesome.
All right. See y'all.